Also, just a reminder that we have two sessions of this resume workshop, so it's mostly the same content. There will be another one at Sunday, like major late on that day. But it's super cool to see all of you here for our first event for assembly. Um, yeah, the Developh Assembly is basically just a way for us in the Developh core team to kind of share knowledge and insights with everyone, and also provide more context about the organization. We've been around since like 2016, but I think a lot of people think that we're intimidating or something. So um, we're just like looking forward to kind of share the knowledge we've gathered over the years and also kind of make clear all the events and programs that we're running. Um, I think most of us are in tech or design, but then just to clarify, Developh is like for everyone interested in creation, especially digital forms of it. So we work on a variety of projects, from like fundraisers to hosting workshops like this, to hosting hackathons and accelerators for students who want to build anything, be it a startup or like work on an art project or something like that. So we're super excited to welcome so many people in and didn't anticipate this level of like support and this amount of registrations. Is super cool. And yeah, I encourage you guys to share your assembly kit to others in the chat if you meet someone interesting, and feel free to PM each other and use the chat throughout this. So yeah, again, reminders, you can use the Developh assembly hashtag. Encourage you to turn your camera on so I'm not just like staring at my own Zoom picture at 1 a.m. where I am. So I have some indicator of how people are finding this, I'm afraid. And then I'll be sending a feedback link later, midway through the workshop and towards the end. So just keep an eye out for that. Yeah. And just to note that this workshop is mostly geared towards high school and college students. And it's like a basic overview on general resume tips as well as us going section by section. And we just crammed the PowerPoint for this an hour ago. So there may be errors, but then that's fine. I think we'll fix it in the slides that you guys said, which is probably the important thing. And let me introduce myself. So I'm Chia. I am the one who has been sending you guys emails and I've been posting most of the stuff about assembly, but I'm currently the founder of Developh, and I founded the org like 4 years ago when I was a third year in high school. And right now I'm an incoming third year studying computer science and art at Yale. I went to high school in Developh. For my background, it's mostly in tech. I've worked in like software engineering, product design roles. So just like keep that in mind. Like most of the tips kind of revolve around that. And the co-writer of the workshop, Princess, who will be leading the Sunday version, is also in tech and a CS course. So just take note of that. This is a very CS-centric background. So if you have anything that you'd like to challenge throughout the course of the workshop, feel free to share and just comment stuff. What qualifies me to talk about this? I went through probably hundreds of iterations on my resume and have applied to a lot of internships and jobs and have probably failed at getting over 400 of them now in these past years, but have obviously succeeded in some. And I think the level of iteration and the level of like new insights that I get from each job application season and from each like event I go to where I kind of absorb more advice from other people and have learned from like reviewing hundreds of other people's resumes at this point, kind of help inform me. And it kind of also shows you that you can still be insanely prepared with this piece of paper, but still fail a lot. And it's really just a game of luck. That's something I want to share. But yeah, I also review scholarships for anitaB.org, which is the organizer of the world's largest women in tech conference. And I run career development events at Developh and at other tech orgs, mostly ones in my college, where we review resumes for other software engineering or product design students mostly. And feel free to connect with me. You can find my LinkedIn and website there, or just Google my name and then just note that you're from the assembly. And I'm happy to give anyone advice, whether it's on their resume or your career in general, especially if you're in tech. So yeah. And this is just like a screenshot of my inbox from last year. And the spreadsheet I had where I tracked all the jobs I applied to, which probably reached like 400 rows. It was bad, but I now have a job, which is telling of something, I hope. But yeah, let's start with going over just like general resume tips. I think people shared their strand and year level, but I'm also curious to know how many people actually have made a resume before. If you can react, that would be cool. So I can see how many people are just like considering making a resume for the first time or have done this before. So feel free to share that if ever. But yeah, I'll just go over the general tips for now. So thank you, Moira. Moira said she's making her resume for the first time. There are three types of applicants. So there's the people who submit the same resume to a few companies. There's people who spam the same resume with a lot of companies. And there are applicants who send a uniquely curated resume for each company. And basically, the best thing you can do is maximize your application chances by personalizing this document. If you have a base template already, the extra 5 minutes you spend to really sell yourself to your company instead of sending the generic template that you do with everyone really makes or breaks your application. And if you think about it, like that 5 additional minutes in customizing your cover letter or moving around like certain experiences will determine whether you get like 5 months of work experience. So even though the application is kind of like grueling, at least the digital process makes it easier for us to literally have the power to have so many different versions and iterations of how we present ourselves, and it's key to maximize that. And if you don't, it's like a waste. Alternatively, for the people who aren't in the job hunt yet, I feel like if you're here and are attending a resume workshop, especially if you're in high school or something, you're probably someone who has been in a lot of orgs or have been really dedicated in one org and kind of get your career advice from like the older alumni or the older upper years in the org. You're probably someone who's already very skilled and talented and has no problem getting into orgs that you want or making connections there at least. But the truth is too that having like that level of org experience and being able to present yourself well with other students is just like, it's completely different from the job application game. I think something that a lot of students fall into, especially people who think that their resume can be padded by orgs, is that your experiences that seem legitimate in student circles will seem like valid at all in the eyes of employers. And in most cases, that's sadly not that way, especially if all your experiences are tied to a specific, are tied to only your high school and college, which is a hard reality to swallow. So yeah, basically every company receives hundreds of applications, most from people who aren't remotely qualified. If you're not submitting your application in the first day, especially if it's just like posted online or something, there's probably a very tiny chance that your resume will be looked at all. Most of them won't even reach the employer or recruiter. And even if you do make that initial pass, people will generally only spend 5 to 7 seconds even glancing at your resume. And if there's something there that doesn't catch their eye, or if they're just in a bad mood, then it's so easy for your entire self on paper to be discarded. Another thing to know for students is that I feel like from the student resumes I've seen, they're either bluffing really, really badly, in that if someone technical kind of like read the resume and just like the bullets right, you're definitely going to look like you're bluffing, and it's going to be terrible. I also see a lot of students underselling themselves completely on their resume. So who are actually doing incredibly well in like the publications they're in, or the awards they've received, but then the way that they lay themselves out on paper like doesn't come close to like the greatness that they have when you actually get to know them and talk to them. And in any world, unless you really know how to word your experiences and also use like keywords and make things concise and clean enough so that they're easily digestible by employers, your work is going to be undersold and it's not going to be glanced at. And even with all this work and consideration on resumes, something important to know is that like even if you have a perfect application, you can't just submit it into the void, especially for jobs. You'll be more successful in cold emailing people and getting opportunities through your network. And the unfortunate reality, especially in the Philippines, is that through this method, a lot of people may not even have to show their resume. But for most of them, you probably will have to. It's just a nice way to like have this brief presentation of yourself on paper, but then just know that even if you have a great like resume, you will need to supplement it by making connections and talking to people, which is a challenging thing and is something that people always say, that like connections and your human relationships are the most important thing. But not everyone knows how to do that. And we'll cover that a bit later, but it's just something to remember that this alone won't make you succeed. It just helps you in certain cases. But yeah, let's go to my resume when I was in high school, or when I just graduated high school, I think. Okay, no, this was in my senior year of high school. I used this resume. And I can quickly talk about why this is terrible. First, it's like very clunky, and I bluffed in so many of these descriptions. I had no idea what I was talking about, and I tried to cram in as many orgs as I had. And there's very little quantification here. Also, it's just like weird to keep calling myself a founder and lead and stuff. Like technically that is the role, but then to employers, it's probably seem really sad. Like it was just like a really try-hard high schooler, which is depressing. And we'll go over my resume and how I've changed it over the years later as well. But yeah, let's talk about what happens when you actually upload your resume. So for online applications, your resume goes through an ATS, which is an applicant tracking system. Most companies will use this. It's, I feel, very rarely that a company will actually look at it without using some sort of like scanning software beforehand. Only people who are filtered incorrectly will have the resume go through. And if it passes this kind of very arbitrary filter, it's only then that a recruiter might pick it up. And then amidst the hundreds of others that have probably passed the keyword count because of the amount of buzzwords they put in, you have like that 5 or 7 seconds to sell yourself. Another note that LinkedIn and GitHub cannot substitute for a resume. They should actually all exist. GitHub if you're a coder, LinkedIn if you're someone who goes for like finance or management or tech roles. You could probably get by without a LinkedIn for like creative fields or something. But yeah, they should all exist to supplement each other. But it's more used for networking. Your resume can't exist in those forms, and these platforms have their own strengths, and using it to outline your experience is not really the right usage for each tool. At least your entire experience in education and scholarship and paper. So how do you make the most out of those 5 seconds with your resume? The most important thing is keep it one page, unless you are late in your career or like in senior level and have been working for at least like 5 years or something. you will definitely be able to have a resume that can be condensed into one page. I didn't think that in high school because I was in so many things too, but I really could have cut it down, especially when I was thinking about the work that I actually truly added value to. And I see so many high school and college students have 2-page resumes, or even if you use the excuse that a CV is a more comprehensive overview of all your qualifications, there's still a lot of bluffing there. And it can also be like, even if you have a CV, it will never go past 2 pages. Only the most important and relevant qualifications for the job should be added in. And this includes like potentially removing like half of the work that you've done, even if it's been tangible, solid experiences. I'm pretty sure that not all of them will be relevant and most like aligned with the job description. So you definitely will be able to condense it into 1 page, even if it's hard. And in this exercise, like in the exercise of like improving your resume, you shouldn't be adding more onto it. Usually, in most cases, you should be condensing it and making it more concise and brief. A lot of Philippine resumes have a photo. Do not do that at all. In your job descriptions and bullet points, only like make sure to use keywords. So something that you should do, especially if you're applying for like an internship application online, or like, yeah, if you're applying to any type of online application or something that's posted on Facebook, you need to take a look at the roles and responsibilities of the role that they put up, and make sure that you have the words in the resume, in that job posting, in your resume. It's a way that they filter things out in the ATS. And it's also a way for you to make sure that this job is actually something that's kind of aligned with your skills, even if you have to force yourself to kind of put those keywords in. So whenever you edit your resume and personalize it for a job, especially a job that you really, really want, make sure that you have keywords and skills that are in the job description. So yeah, 4 is basically how you should write your experience. Make sure it just includes the name of the company, the name of your employer, your role, and clarify the role if it's not. And feel free to like edit your role and clarify it. I usually do not add the exact role in my internships because I end up doing like more work that's out of scope. So I kind of play around with the term, like if I was a tech intern at a company, but then I ended up filling more of product design and front end responsibilities, I will write that instead. And that's totally fine. That's not lying. It's just making sure your responsibilities are clear. Add the dates of employment, and then I think like debatable, the 1-line description and the 1 or 2 accomplishments. There's so many different ways to format it, but then this is a good rule of thumb, especially if the description of your responsibilities isn't very obvious. This is not super applicable to everyone, but then the headline is basically the thing at the top of your resume, whatever you use after your name to kind of describe, I guess, like what you are. I see people using like CS and art student, or journalism student. Another tip when submitting your resume to online application systems is make sure that the file name is proper. This applies even more so if you're emailing your resume to a recruiter. So make sure it has your name, because they'll usually just download these files in bulk. And if it's generic, there's a good chance that it will be lost. So make sure your files are as memorable as possible. So this is how I would kind of break down the different sections of a resume. And the tips for each. There are probably sections that I missed while writing this. So if you have questions about like if you have more questions about like what an objective field would look like or a publications field, feel free to bring that up in chat. And also I feel like anyone can chime in here because there's so many ways to really look at this, but these are just like my takes. So again, general formatting tips. The thing that you must do is make sure that your resume can be parsed properly. So earlier I talked about how your resume will go through an application tracking system. So the way you can check if your resume will actually be readable by an application system is literally just go to like Indeed.com, which is like a job search platform. In an account, just connect it to Google quickly and then upload your resume. See that they pre-fill their fields with it. See that they pre-fill fields about your education or work experience, and check how well those fields are filled out. So I had a resume that was formatted like really badly in the first year of college, and when I ran it through Indeed, the work experience was all jumbled up. So you can see like the accolades, the work experience aren't like fixed. And if your work experience doesn't parse properly, there's a good chance that you're being completely disregarded by a lot of application systems. So you absolutely must make sure that your resume is parsable by an ATS. I think a note to share is that this resume that I was using was 2 columns, and it's iffy to use a 2-column resume it's iffy to use a resume that's over designed because there's a huge chance that it won't be read properly. So actually the more clean and minimalist and concise your resume is, and especially if it's 1 column, the better chance it has of going through. So let me just like type Indeed.com. Check if it's like parsable by that website. So other general formatting tips. I see a lot of people using Canva templates. I didn't even know that they were Canva. So I think Canva's getting better at making them. If you're a software engineering student or if you're in tech, you probably know that LaTeX templates are good and they're super scannable. And again, you have to optimize your resume for like clarity. If someone wants to go through it and then find your skills or kind of academic background or accolades, they should be able to immediately jump to that section. Also, this is an example of a bad resume, and we can talk about why as we go along. Another thing is you have to really proofread your resume over and over, get different eyes on it, because there will be a point where you basically won't be able to see your mistakes, especially if the iterations are super similar. I'd advise against over-designed resumes. So even if Canva templates are fine, a resume is not a design exercise, and it doesn't matter if it's pretty. The best designers I know do not have like colorful or visual resumes. They're clean. They use a lot of white space. So that's more important than having graphics or colors or any type of formatting besides like making text bigger. Like even emphasis or like italics should be very sparse. And again, make things as concise as possible. In every iteration, if you add a new role, you'll be able to probably condense something in something else. Go to the introduction part of the resume. And this looks so sad because I just found a random resume on Google and crossed things out. So I'm so sorry. But yeah, important thing with the introduction part of your resume, which is like the headline basically, make sure your name stands out. I don't think there's any rule on whether it should be last name, first name. Just make sure it's like bolded and the type is larger and that's very clear. Address, photo, nickname. This entire personal data section is terrible and it's not necessary. I don't know in what case it is, unless you're like a model and you need a photo. In fact, adding like these data points makes it easier for employers to discriminate against you. So obviously, like if your name is feminine, it's very likely that you may be offered a lower pay scale, just for so many reasons. Your civil status is used to discriminate, your age especially too. So try not to add those in. Another thing that I see a lot of people have, especially people who don't have a lot on their resume yet, is like an objective or summary. And I really don't think that it's necessary, especially because so many objectives I see are completely generic. I would say that an objective is only necessary if you're years into your career, which is probably not anyone here, or if you're looking for something very specific and it doesn't necessarily reflect itself in your work experiences. So for example, in the Developh resume review sessions we've done in the past, I've seen people who were in like bio backgrounds wanting to switch into journalism and only having like published research that really like talked about that, and that's also not exactly the same thing. So having that one-liner as an objective is good, but the rest of materials in an objective are also very like generic. Like if you read the objective that's laid out here, it's basically you want to find an internship that's kind of given based on the job you're applying to. They'll know that. Everyone wants to develop themselves as a person. It's just very unnecessary, and all of this can be addressed in your cover letter. And even if it is addressed in your cover letter, it should probably not be written like this. So the headline should legit just be something as simple as this. This is from Bianca, who is a core member of Developh. It just makes it clear her name is the only colored thing in the entire resume, and it stands out pretty distinctly. She has a subheading just specifying herself as a visual designer and artist. What she added in was her website and LinkedIn. So if you have a website and LinkedIn, these are super great to add and people actually click through them. Email is good, and make sure it's like appropriate and proper and updated. Feel free to use your EDU or your personal one. And some people add contact number, that's also fine. But then for people who upload their resume online, like if you have a website, probably don't add that. The next most important section for students is just your education section. So these are mine. This was the education section I had in high school. Yeah, in senior year of high school, and the one I have in my resume now. What should be there? Oh, and this is Princess's education section. Something I don't see a lot is just make your education say your expected graduation date. There's no need to share when you started your program, especially in cases where you're taking longer. Like unless you really want to add that, feel free to just add your end date. Like no one needs to know when you started it. And I would just write like the expected year, but then there are certain but in my job hunting process, a lot of companies are very particular about like what season you graduate in, which is why I added the month. GPA, if it's good, list it down. If it's not, you can leave it out. I actually would leave my GPA here out just because it's not DL level in my school, the 3.6. But I just added it anyway. I don't know why. Yes. I don't have this in my examples, but then if you have relevant coursework, for example, if you're a CS student and you took like linear algebra or discrete math or something, which I took but then did not add, I don't know why. This is a good place to add that in. You don't need to write like the year or when you took it, just like list it down. Like literally just list the course names and don't add like the course, don't add like the course abbreviations, write the most obvious like way of describing it. So that's also good to list, especially if you've taken hard courses and are still relatively early on in your college career. So for education, like something that I also did here is I added that I was like top 1 in the batch and then in my strand. So that's something you can do. And if you're DL or have an academic award, definitely list it down and give context. Think about how many people are in your batch. So for the Zabel one, I wrote that there were like about 400 people here. What's the cutoff for your award? How many people? Yeah, how many people in the batch get the award? So, for example, there are schools that give an honor to like a majority of the class or through like 30%, and it's good to just like specify how many people achieved it, just so there's a bit more clarity about it. For this one, I would also add like how many people get a general weighted average of over 1.5, or yeah. Another way to quantify this, if you don't like have an award, is like to list down if you're like in the top 10% or top 20% or something of your batch. Those are nice to do, and it makes it clear. And just a note, remove your unrelated education. After my first sem of college, I removed my high school. And in my first sem of college, I still left it in. I added that I was like Vale. And then I added the location only because I was an international student. I wanted to reflect that. But I don't think that's necessary anymore. And also don't include anything like older than 4 years. So if you're in high school, don't include your middle school or anything earlier. Whether it's in the education section or like awards or experiences from middle school. I don't even know what experiences you'd have as a middle schooler, but then just know that. Okay, references section. I've never had this, but I feel like it shouldn't be included in your resume. The reason for that is that they'll probably ask you if needed, and then I see so many like references available upon request. Like, yeah, that's probably everyone. So you don't need to specify that. And also, if an application, I guess something like a scholarship, probably, or if like a college transfer application, needs a reference, then they already have another field where you can indicate that. So there's no need to waste space on your resume. To add like references, and also do not add like the contact information of your references. Do not expose that on your doc. My advice for references is to just use your LinkedIn. There's the recommendation section, but then even then I'm not really sure what the impact of it is, but then it's pretty useful, especially if someone finds out that someone in your references is someone that they know. And do not give out the details of people who are willing to vouch for you to random people, because that will make them less likely to vouch for you. So about this skills section, this is pretty tricky because like, especially as a young student, what actual skills do we even have? So I would say to not include skills like communication or leadership or Microsoft Excel, because the reasoning is that most people probably have those qualities, and you can't really list leadership as a trait. It should be something that is shown in your experiences. Communication is like if you're not communicative as any type of worker, it's probably a bad sign. Just don't list anything that are like obvious or given, or things that are already kind of shown in your work experiences. So if you're a president of a club, for example, it's probably obvious that you're already a leader type. If you've led any sort of team, you're already a leader. If you work on like external relations for another org, you probably are good at communication and partnerships. And like, and they're just like very generic. So I'd really just advise against them. And also like skills that everyone knows, like Google Suite, you don't need to add that. And even if you do list Google Suite, you probably don't even know like the full extent of using it. So that skills, the way you should really just write them down is to list it in decreasing order of familiarity. And when I say list them, like, yeah, list them. Do not put charts or bars. This image is cut off, but then it says no, nope, nope, no. Yes. Like, even putting years of experience is very iffy, because 3 years of experience can mean something very different to many people. And you need to try and be objective as possible in listing your skills, and no one can really be objective there. So the thing that is best to do is just like list them in decreasing order of familiarity. And even here, I didn't do that right. I'm probably not as skilled in SQL as I am in Photoshop. And I think it's just because I sectioned it into design and code. And in my current resume and in what I would do to fix this is to section it off into like technical stuff and then design stuff. But yeah, just sit down in order of familiarity. So what can you even write in your skill section? The best thing that you can probably list down as a student is like software, stuff you picked up certifications for. And just like as a challenge, just think about your skills relative to your peers. I see a lot of like high school and college students like have stuff like social media management or something, skills that they have because they kind of take this on for their organization or for a volunteer activity they have, when that can mean different things to so many people. It's definitely different from actual social media management, where you have to filter and triage like inbox queries from how many different platforms and set up a social media management tool, come up with insights and strategies, set up Zapier automations or anything like that. You probably don't do that as a student, and it may not exactly be expected of you, but then it's probably easier to just say what software and not like productivity software, but like actual tools, and if you picked up how to use like the insights tool, or actually post up ads, those are things to consider. If you know programming languages, you can add them in. If you've done like a research class and several years of it, you can consider that as a skill. But just definitely keep this small. Yeah. Another idea is to look at the job description that you're applying for and then see what software they're recommending. Then you can use that to kind of customize your skill section for the job you're going for. So again, tips, kind of try to separate your competencies and technical skills. For designers, running design sprints is a skill, but then it's not really a software. So that's like something you can set up, you can list differently. And then you could have another section for your technical skills. Also, Adobe Suite, try to specify like which stuff in Adobe Suite, because you probably don't know everything in the collection. Then let's go to the heavy section. So for your experiences, most important things, don't bluff. For roles as shared in the general tips, your company, your role, the timeline are important. Location, not really, unless it's notable, like you work abroad or something. Reverse chrono, even if you don't have actual work experience, org experience is totally fine. Side project experience is fine. It can mean so many things, and you can have different like dividers in your experience section. Here's an example of an experience I had in my high school resume, and it's really terrible. Just like glancing over it, there's no link to the publication. There's no indication of how frequently does it publish. Maybe I posted like 3 articles once. That is not a good sign. I didn't write about how many readers we have, how many editors or reviewers were in my team, probably because I only had 4, how many submissions I managed, and how many we kind of accept, just to show like the selectivity of it. How many followers does the publication have? Yeah. So a lot of my experiences in high school kind of look like this, and there's definitely better ways to improve it. Even if numbers are kind of low, it's more informative than just like sharing a description that really tells you nothing. So for experiences, everyone says this, but then showcase your impact, not just your responsibilities. If you can, condense it into bullet points or like a short paragraph. So like a consistent length, depending on the activity. I would recommend starting out with bullet points because it's easy to veer into just like listing down the role you took in, but not the actual impact in a paragraph format. So start out your paragraph with like action words, quantify things with numbers. So how do you showcase impact? You need to quantify it. And when reviewing like students' resumes, it really sucks because most of them just list down their responsibilities without any indication of like the numbers they achieved. And I know that most students here have probably done incredible things in any fundraising event they've done or in any like org they've worked in for a long time. So just think about questions like how much money did you raise? How many people did you lead if you were a leader in something? If you were in a council or in an org, how many events did you guys hold? How many people attended each event? If you wrote something, how many reads, how many downloads, how many engagement does your org get? How competitive is the program you got into? What constraints did you work under? So did you get to launch something in like a few weeks? Were you able to like hustle for something and execute fast? So that's really important. This was in my activities section too. Really bad because no idea what responsibilities they entailed. Only good thing is probably that the org names were clarified. Like for Selectable, which is ran by my friend, I at least wrote that it was a mental health organization to give like some indicator, but then also like there's no indication of what it does. Does it just do advocacy? Is it a publication? Does it do like a helpline? This is also really bad because I was in so many things and I probably was useless in most of them. And it's hard to scan over this and see which ones were valuable to me. And also, why does it look like it's not formatted the same? Like I led some things I definitely spent more time on, but then they were like ranked the same as things that I barely spent a few hours a month on. And again, if you led something, which I'm sure a lot of people here have, consider how many people you lead, how many people did your team impact, what new things did you run? If you are in something like, if you were in an old org, like a publication or a student council or like your batch org or something, think about what new things you instituted, what did you improve from the previous council? Don't just list down your roles. That's like easy way to lose out on selling yourself. Then an award section, really good if you can showcase how significant the award is. So people will write like so many schools in the Philippines will have really freaky names for the awards. Like my Developh awards were named after saints or something, and that doesn't really show anything. You need to add like extra lines, or even change the name of the award when you list it down to be able to share more information about it. Things to think about are how many people received it, how prestigious is it, did you compete globally for it? So to the tips and experience. And for people who don't have a lot of work experience, or people who really like working on things outside like internships and traditional jobs, side projects are a great way to fill up space in your resume. If you're a builder or a writer, link your case studies, your websites, publications you've had, any press you've had, and do your best to quantify it. So follow the same rules and experiences. So these are examples of like a project I listed and how concise I really made it. Then I linked to a case study sharing more information about the entire project. In Bianca's resume, she did something similar, talking about the reach of a project she worked with. So it was relatively short term, but then she talked about how much money she raised, how much people were in her team. Good things to add. So yeah, it was so long. It is now 15 minutes past 1. But writing an effective and eye-catching resume is something that you will always be iterating on. You will expand your brain cells, and it's so draining to have to iron yourself out for someone else on paper. But at the same time, don't spend too much time on your resume. I think there was a part where I was spending too much time on my resume and portfolio as opposed to doing actual work. And it's okay to like start spending a lot of time on it if you're clutching for like an application or something like that. But then you need to work on the things you're actually engaged with and take breaks from it, because there's going to be points where you kind of don't see your mistakes anymore. And ask for feedback from your friends. Don't be shy. There's literally nothing to lose. Ask for feedback from your relatives and parents. Literally post it and then ask if anyone has feedback. People are always free to give comments. And yeah, this is just something wanted to share. Whenever you get a rejection, it's not your fault. There's so many factors, and it's really just based on their perception of you, or if maybe it didn't go through, or they were just in a bad mood. There's just so many factors, and it's easy to be a young student entering the job search at first and thinking that that you're completely like worthless when you aren't. I'm definitely sure that if you even took the initiative to attend this workshop, there's so many incredible things that you've done, and resumes are just like a super classist thing. It's hard to get like good career advice out in the open. There's only so many resources, and it's also something that isn't really properly taught, and it's something that you really need to get experience and learn from. Even my resume last year was terrible, so just keep that in mind. I wanted to share that if you want help with your resume, feel free to share it on Discord. So in your assembly emails, we linked our new Developh Discord a lot. Please don't get mad at us because it's like dead. But feel free to paste it in, or if you're shy about like pasting the whole thing, just feel free to like write, can anyone give me feedback on my resume? And then people will reach out to you, whether from the core team or if you want to help out, like review anyone else's, definitely do so. I encourage you to give each other feedback. I'm sure we can all like pick up new perspectives and yeah, improve how we present ourselves. But yeah, okay, I think that is it for this workshop. Aside from posting your resume on our Discord, if you want like specific feedback, so we run this thing called like the Developh Resume Circle. We started it last week, and we get like 3 to 4 people in like a 1-hour session where we'll review people's resumes live. And what we do is like we'll just like give out our initial comments, like on first glance, what are we thinking of? And then after the session, you're free to take notes, but then we'll also send over an annotated copy. So that will probably open up after assembly again. So if you're interested in that, do that. So yeah, let me paste in the feedback form again. Feel free to submit it and roast me. Okay, this is the wrong feedback form. I have to get the right link. Okay, while I'm finding the feedback form link, feel free to ask questions because we still have time. And I think the people in the other workshop are also cramming their slides. Okay, if you have questions, ask them in the chat, please. I'll be happy to address them. Thank you for recommending the resume circle. And yeah, if you're on Discord, really just post your resume now. I will do my best to give feedback throughout the afternoon, and there's another session of the workshop in case this is interesting. And don't forget to get the stamp you get after filling in the feedback form and give us data. Yes. I think there were like some questions in the chat. Let me go back to them. Okay, someone asked me if it's better to accidentally undersell yourself or oversell yourself. So it's easy to tell if a student is bluffing, but honestly, do your best to flex. On paper, I definitely still oversell myself on my own resume. And I think it's just safer to do that. Like really just do your best to showcase all the best parts of you and flex, because this is your only chance to on paper. So yeah, oversell yourself. It's okay if people think you're bluffing because everyone else your age is also bluffing. So don't worry about that. Okay, so I've never seen, okay, so There was a question, do you think the overall design or layout of the resume affects the impression you make? Personally, do you require a well layouted or designed resume? I've never seen someone reject a resume just because it's so ugly, but I have seen so many people reject resumes that are like overly, like very beautifully crafted, whether templated or not, just because the content was like shit. So it does not matter. The most amazing people I know have very simple resumes. Um, it does give you an impression, especially if you're like a designer, but then really the content matters more. And if you only have limited time, I'd say like work on the content more and just get like a really, really good template that's already out there. And there's so many templates that it's not worth. If it's hard for you, like don't spend your time like making your own layout or anything. Just use something that's already out there and that's something that's proven to work. If someone has a nice resume template, you can ask them where they made it. So that's something you could do. And I don't know, there's a personally, do you require a well layered or designed resume question? I don't know in what context would I require that. No, I don't need a well layered resume. I just need a resume that really tells me about the person's experiences and is clear about why someone is aligned with the role that they're going for. Yeah, I never think about layout. Pauline, Pao asks, do companies care about org involvement? um, I mean, I don't like in what sense? Because if your org accomplished, like, it depends on what you accomplish with your org. They will not like shit themselves because you were in a certain org and think that you're amazing because of it. It really depends on the impact that you've driven in that org. You can be in an org that's like well regarded, like a GMA or whatever, and be super useless. Um, you can be in an org that you founded and built from the ground up and like bootstrap everything. And if you explain it properly, the tools you used, what you brought it from, the impact you had, then that's going to be something that people care about. It's really just like the impact you had. And I would say that in choosing opportunities, if there's a lot of like potential to, if you want to use your skills to improve on something, whether it's an org or a project, choose choose your opportunities based on what you can drive the most change in. Not necessarily like orgs that are just like well regarded and prestigious, especially if you think they're very stringent and if you don't think that you'll be able to build enough leverage to actually like make any impact in the organization. Choose opportunities where you can actually like be proud of what you did. It's also okay to have opportunities that are like community based or social based, if you want like friends or something. But make sure to be able to like know what orgs you're in, mostly for the social aspects or ones where you're actually excited about like the work they're doing and the impact they bring about. So like org involvement is, yeah, it's a way to measure your ability to work in teams. So there's so many other ways you can do that, like in school projects, especially if you're in a thesis project that's group. Like I think that tells you a lot more about your team involvement. And really depends on like the team you're in an org too. Yeah, it obviously depends company to company. It's nice to ask them what their values are, or literally just like look up the resumes of people who work there. So like if there's a company you like search the company name on LinkedIn, um search for people by education, like if they're a recent grad, and look at the resumes of the recent grads who are already working there to help you give you like some sort of indicator of what your resume should look like for that company. And also feel free to reach out to those recent grads. They're usually happy to help you if you're interested in where they work. Okay. We have another workshop starting 1 minute ago. So I will end this and go to the other workshop, which is Designing with Developh, which will be run by Bianca and Avi. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to fill out this form. We won't send this link again. So open it if you haven't. Yes, fill the form, please. I hope you learned something. I'm excited to help you guys with your resumes or your applications in general. Feel free to share them. Thank you so much for coming, and I'll see you in the assembly or in the next workshops.